better than girl talk? Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk? A chat with the ladies about their day, the ups and downs along the way. She's a cook, she's a chauffeur, she's a worker bee. First in the door and last to leave. Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk? Girl talk, girl talk. What's better than girl talk?
Hi, I'm Regina Ayars and a co-host of Girl Talk.
And I'm Carol Voisin, the other part of the co-host, and I want to welcome you to Girl Talk 2018. And as you can tell, we have changed our set right here in RVTV. We have our logo that's new, and we are also have a new theme song that Regina wrote and sang. So thank you, Regina.
You're welcome. Well, this show is going to be about women running for office. And since the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, and I won't mention his name, there have been over 20,000 women contact Emily's List wanting information on running for office. Emily's List is an organization that supports women who are Democrats and support a woman's right to choose get elected for office. The most inquiries that they have ever had before was 9,000, and this year they had 20,000. So women want to run for city council, school boards, county commissions, state representatives and senators, and federal congressional positions. Over 350 women are running for Congress in 2018. And women are winning. So in Virginia, voters elected 25 women to the House of Delegates, up from a previous record of just 19 in 2013. The women include the first transgender woman, the first Latinas, and the first African American woman to be elected to the chamber. So let's take a look at some of these winners right now. In Virginia, we have Jennifer Carroll, and Foy is her last name, and she ran and won in House District 2, and she beat a GOP-backed Navy veteran. Also in Virginia is Danica Roem, House District 13. Will become the first openly transgender person to be elected and serve in the state legislature chamber. She beat an incumbent who had won 13 races over 2 decades. Also in Virginia, Kathy Tran, District 42, will be the first Asian American to serve. And we've all heard about Shelley Simmons. She has really had a long, difficult challenge here after she actually ran for office. She was announced the winner, having beaten her opponent by 1 vote. So don't say that 1 vote doesn't count. That brought the Virginia House to a 50-50 split. That was then. And after a recount, it became a tie, and there was some controversy about that particular ballot. But it was a tie, and the law in Virginia is that a tie is broken by a blind draw, and the winner was selected. So last Thursday, January 4th, her opponent's name was selected, and the Virginia House is held by Republicans by 1 seat. Then we have Georgia. That is Deborah Gonzalez, and she won House District 117. And in Louisiana, we have Mazari Salih wins an at-large seat on the Iowa. Excuse me, that wasn't Louisiana, that was Iowa. I forgot my abbreviations for the states. People don't use that anymore. And she was the first immigrant on the council. And then Massachusetts, we have Lydia Edwards. And Lydia will be one of 5 women of color on the 13-seat council. That's really quite amazing. Then Minnesota, we have Andrea Jenkins, and Andrea beat 3 candidates for her seat on the Minneapolis City Council, and she is a trans woman of color. And then in New Hampshire, we have Joyce Craig. She became the first woman elected as mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire's largest city, beating an incumbent. North Carolina, Vi Lyles wins she became the mayor of Charlotte, and she is the first woman of color to be the mayor of that community. Washington State, Jenny Durkin. Jenny is elected mayor of Seattle, the first woman elected to the office in over 100 years, and the first lesbian woman elected. So, Carol.
Yes. Today, our guest is a woman candidate for the 2nd Congressional District in Oregon. And that is Jamie McLeod Skinner. And she is our guest today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's delightful to be here. And thanks for that great intro of the women who have gone before. It really brings a new meaning to how to run like a girl.
Okay.
That's right. Well said. Well
And
said.
win.
And win.
And so Regina and I are going to be asking you a few questions.
Super.
And then we're going to open it up to our live audience for them to ask questions of you.
Looking forward to it. And thank you so much for doing this, providing this community service, and inspiring women of all ages to step into leadership roles. It's a great, great thing. So thank you.
Great. It's a great showcase for women.
Absolutely.
Girl Talk is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So let's get started.
Let's get started. And Jamie, why don't you start us off with, tell us about your background.
Sure.
And I know you've done a lot of different things. And then why you decided to run for District 2.
Well, I'll first of all say why I decided to run is because hopelessness is not an option. And we have a vacancy of leadership right now. We are being hurt by Washington, D.C. on everything from this regressive tax bill that just came forward, to the divisiveness that's going on, to the repealing and taking away of our health care. And our current congressman here in the 2nd Congressional District is really taking a lead on that. And while I respect public service, if you're not taking care of your community, you need to be replaced. And so I'm running to replace him. My background is in engineering and planning and law. I was actually born in Wisconsin, which was where Wayne Morse was born, who was a great Oregonian. Lived overseas as a child, and then finished high school actually here in Southern Oregon. I've got family throughout the district, which is it helps me to not only be connected to our district, but really understand the issues throughout our district and cross that urban-rural divide. Mm-hmm. I've served in elected office before. I worked with my hands, my heart, and my head, and all those things I think are really needed to serve our community well.
Mm-hmm. And you are the only candidate that held elected office. Is that correct of your opponents?
That's correct. There will be a primary, and so we'll be running, that will be in May, but I'm the only one who has held elected office and really has the roots and the family connections throughout the district. As I mentioned, I finished high school here in Southern Oregon. My mom, Marty Hall, taught here in Southern Oregon, also in Central Oregon. She's now retired there. And my wife's family's been ranching in Eastern Oregon for over 100 years.
Great, great. So Carol, you got a question?
I do have a question. Jamie, your background is extensive,
Yeah.
and you're very well qualified for running for office. One part of your experience has been a city councilor
Yeah.
in Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Now, Santa Clara had some issues around what was happening with the 49ers coming in, and you were on the council at that point in time. So I'd like to know how you handled these large corporations that were wanting to have a piece of Santa Clara. It'll give us an idea of how you might handle what's going on in Washington. Can you just give us an idea of that?
Absolutely. And again, representing our district and caring for individuals in the community is a crucial part of the role, and not just knee-jerking and being responsive to what's being asked of us by corporations or by big business. Business is important, but also we need to take care of the folks in our community. So what happened in Santa Clara is the San Francisco 49ers came in and asked the city to build them a publicly funded stadium. So they wouldn't have to pay taxes, and so they could essentially have the city build them a stadium.
They wanted the city to build it.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Nice.
And I'm a huge football fan, but my oath of office was to my constituents and not to a football team. And so I was initially the first person, there ended up being two of us, to stand up and say, wait a minute, we are happy to have public-private partnerships, but ultimately we need to protect the city. And so it was a multi-year process and negotiation. My role ended up being asking the tough questions, providing leverage to our staff to negotiate a much better deal for the city, and also to essentially hold an outside entity accountable who wanted to take advantage of public resources and public funds.
Very good. Thank you.
And that's something, to your point of Washington, I think that's really important to do in Washington as well. Because again, we need to focus public resources on caring for our communities and not tax write-offs, like the recent tax bill. Tax write-off and tax cuts for big corporations as opposed to helping our families and our communities.
So here's a follow-up.
Sure.
How are you going to keep in touch with your constituency? Second District is huge. How are you going to be in touch with your 750,000 people?
By showing up and being accountable and staying in touch with my constituents. That's what I did before. I have a track record of doing that. And I believe very strongly in connecting with folks at the local level because there's wisdom at the local level. There's great decision making going on at the local level. And in Oregon, we have a tradition of doing that. We have a tradition of coming together across the political divide and solving community problems. And my role in Washington will be to help facilitate that, provide the additional resources needed so that communities can come together and solve their problems. And that's why I've spent the past 6 months traveling through our district. And it is huge. Our district is essentially the size of the state of Missouri. And it's 2/3 of our state, 20 counties. But it's important to show up, to listen, and to understand what the local concerns are, and to figure out how you, as an elected official, can help serve your community. It's about public service.
So,
Thank you.
what would you say are the four, let's say four, I'll just pick four, most important issues that people are telling you that are concerns for them in their communities?
Well, we're a huge district, and so there are different issues in different places. The economy is generally across the board a concern, but it's more of an issue in Klamath County than, say, in Umatilla County. Healthcare is a #1 issue across the board, and that's a huge area where we need to solve problems in Washington, D.C., and come up with healthcare that everyone has access to. And this is a huge issue in Eastern Oregon, in rural communities, because ranchers and farmers many of them did not have access to health care before the Affordable Care Act, before the ACA. And so they've really been hurt by Greg Walden's stance to repeal and remove access to health care. So health care is a big one, the economy is a big one. Opioid addiction is rampant throughout our district. And so how do we step in and how do we provide the resources and help to make sure that's addressed? One of the key issues that I've heard from listening to folks who work in addiction recovery programs is housing. So housing is an issue throughout our district in general, but housing is also a key factor in getting people off of opioid addiction once they've gone through a program to provide safe space. So there's a great program going on in Klamath Falls right now. There are solutions throughout our district and ideas throughout our district. So those are the things, again, that we need to support. Other things, education is always a key, and so I've got some ideas on how we can work with the K through 12 Head Start programs. That needs to be funded. The CHIP program needs to be funded for children's health care. And then also access to college and trade schools. But another key critical issue that has to be addressed is the struggle that our veterans are having with PTSD. There's the number of 22 per day. We're losing 22 per day of our veterans to suicide.
Wow.
And that should be something we are all concerned with, because whether or not you believe in our foreign policy of sending troops, we need to be committed to taking care of our troops when they come home. And this is important to me because I started my public service in Bosnia and Kosovo, working to repair schools and hospitals after the war in Bosnia, and designing water and sanitation systems in Kosovo. And so I've seen firsthand the incredible commitment our troops have to care for us and to try to bring stability to the regions where they serve. And we have an absolute commitment, I believe, to take care of them when they come home.
Well said.
Thanks.
One of my so-called mentors is George Leacoff.
Yes.
And he gives really good advice to Dems, saying what you need to do when you go into a campaign is you need to reframe the questions and the issues so that they are identified clearly with the values that each community carries. So how are you doing that? How are you reframing this so that Walden doesn't take off with his framing that is so different from where most of us are? How are you going to do that?
Sure, and that's really a key part of my discussions with folks throughout the district. But just before I talk about reframing and language, I want to talk about mentorships, and I want to thank you because you've run for this seat before and provided mentorship to those of us who are looking to provide better leadership for our district. So thank you for that. So then around reframing, I greatly admire Lakoff, and I think it does come down to the language we use and the words we use. Because ultimately, what we're seeing right now from Washington is divisiveness, and we're being divided, and buzzwords are being used to pit us against each other. Bottom line, good governance is about helping people come together to solve community problems. We can't come together when we use these buzzwords and we're fighting with each other. And the other thing too, throughout our district, what I've been talking about is not just about party affiliation. I'm a Democrat, but we need to come together across party lines. And we have a history of doing that in Oregon. So I talk about Oregon values because when we look at coming together and solving community problems, it really comes down to that. Specifically on buzzwords, if we look at healthcare, for example, there are terms that are out there that when you talk about Medicare for all, or Obamacare is a big trigger word for a lot of people, or even single payer. These are great concepts, but when we talk about ideas, that's what brings people together. It's the buzzwords that drive people apart and create the conflict in our conversations with folks. So this past summer when I was at county fairs throughout our district, and I was talking to folks, again, conservative Republicans and independent-minded independents, as well as Democrats. We talked ideas, and that's really the key. So on healthcare, what I like to talk about is making sure everyone has access. There's a lot of agreement around that. Making sure that we control costs. There's tremendous agreement around that. Making sure it's a quality experience that people have. Again, agreement that we find around that. And caring for our caregivers. And when we talk ideas, we find consensus. And then what we actually call the program, honestly, I don't care what we call it ultimately, but those are the ideas that move forward. And those are the ideas that we can come together around across party lines. I've seen it throughout our district.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So how are you differentiating yourself from your opponents? You're running in a primary in May, so you're going to be winning that primary. So how are you differentiating yourself so that you will win?
Well, this is an exciting time. People see that Walden is vulnerable, and there's a lot of energy throughout our district. So we have had some great folks step up who have some excitement and energy around this race. What distinguishes me is the fact I've served in elected office before. What distinguishes me is that I've got family throughout the district, and also that I've worked here in the district. I worked in Klamath Falls on the water case. I've worked here in Southern Oregon as a city manager, and also my roots having gone to high school here in the district. That really distinguishes me from most of my opponents.
Great, great. So do you have a strategy for winning that primary?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's because we are a big district and we are a very diverse district, we need a 20 county strategy, and that's what we've got in place.
Okay.
So I spent the past 6 months traveling around and building up the relationships and getting to know people and hearing some of the issues and concerns in the different parts of our state and part of our district. And now it's a matter of putting that strategy together, building up that team that will not only help me in my race, but really is also building up the farm team. It's spreading progressive ideas and building up the network of people that will help elect folks at the local level, at the regional level, and build up the network we need and the relationships we need across party lines to have a more positive politics, to rebuild public trust in government and really promote effective, cohesive, and collaborative government.
How are you going to get that Republican to listen to you, to really go across lines and to find the common ground with you? How are you going to persuade them?
It's about focusing on problem solving. So let me tell you about my mom's farrier. My mom lives in Central Oregon, and she has horses. And her farrier is a proud Republican who has driven past her Obama and Hillary lawn signs for years to care for her horses. He's a really good guy. And whenever he leaves, he always tells her, you know, if you ever need anything, let me know. And when last year there was a huge snowstorm in Central Oregon, and he showed up to make sure he was okay. I use him as an example of Oregon values. We have a lot in common, and there's some really great people who have different party affiliations than ourselves, who are part of our community, an important part of our community. So when he, a couple times ago when he was working on my mom's horses, I went and I was chatting with him. And at first he was really nervous because I'm a Democrat and because I'm running for office. And I asked him about the issues that matter most to him. Healthcare. He's worried about his kids having access to healthcare. And so I listened to his concerns and we talked about it. And we talked ideas. And by the end of our conversation, he was giving me advice and he was suggesting things that I should do. And then my mom contacted me recently, and he apparently has told her next time he's out working on her horses, he's wondering if I'm going to be in the area because he's got some more ideas for me.
Whoa,
So
that's good.
And it really, again, it comes down to not focusing on party, but focusing ideas and how we care for communities. Because I don't care what your party affiliation is. Across the board, I'm finding people care first about their families and secondly about their communities. That's true of all of us. And we come together and do that, those are Oregon values. And that's what I'm focused on.
And Jamie, you're a good listener. That's excellent. That makes a candidate.
No, that makes a good elected official.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said.
Otherwise,
Well said.
you're not doing your job. And showing up, as you asked about before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Excellent.
Carol and I met you about a year ago. And so how long, and you mentioned in passing that you were thinking about running. How long have you been thinking about running for this position?
Well, at the time, me and my family, we were talking about it. I had not, Walden needs to be replaced because he's hurting our district. And he's hurting our country, frankly, by not focusing on things that are good and healthy for our community. And I was looking to see if I thought someone was running that I thought I could support and who I thought would be able to beat him. And as I mentioned, there's some wonderful people in the race, some very nice people, but I think I'm in the best position to beat him in November because of my family contacts, because of my work history in the community, and because of my experience in not just running for office and winning, but also serving my community well. I think that's going to play out, and I think that's going to be the way we can beat him and take care of our district.
Have you met him?
I have not. I've been to his town hall, one of his town halls.
Oh, yeah.
And I was at the one where he said he would absolutely not support taking away, would not support, it was a pre-existing condition question that came up. And he would absolutely protect people with pre-existing conditions. And then he went back to Washington the next week and wrote the repeal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And,
Right.
and that's part of the issue too. I've met more angry Republicans at him throughout the district, especially in Eastern Oregon, than even angry Democrats. Because he's
Whoa.
not caring for our community and people see it. And also he's not being genuine when he comes and talks to people. He'll say one thing and then he'll go off and do something else. Look at what he's doing right now with the tax bill that just went through. He is spinning it in such a way that actually it sounds okay the way he's saying it, but he's not talking about the fact that our tax cuts are going to go away after a few years, that corporation tax cuts are locked in, and that the $1.5 trillion deficit is something we and future generations are going to be paying for. That's not what he's saying. And people get it. People get it.
Right. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are coming up to the end of our part 1.
Yes. So part 1 is finished, almost, and we want you all to stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to have an audience, a live audience that are going to be asking Jamie questions. So if you can just stay tuned, and you will see some even more poignant questions that are going to be asked of Jamie.
So thank you, Jamie.
Great,
and we'll
thanks
be
so
back
much.
shortly.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Getaway, getaway, getaway now. Getaway, getaway, getaway now. Take a plane, take a train, take a car. Just getaway, getaway, getaway now. Too far, just getaway, getaway, getaway now.
Hi, I'm Regina Ayars and the host of Getaway Girl. Join me to learn how travel can open you up to new people, new experiences, and new inspirations. You can take on a new persona when you travel, lighter, freer, more willing to be spontaneous, and able to just go with the flow. I know I do. You can join me and travel around the world. Uganda and Rwanda to see the great apes. Netherlands to see Amsterdam from the canals. See Cuba and Havana and the countryside. Or travel to Myanmar to see the temples of Old Bagan. Russia to walk the streets of Moscow. Join me soon for Getaway Girl.
Getaway, getaway, getaway now. Getaway, getaway, getaway now. Take a plane, take a train, take a car. Just getaway, getaway, getaway now.